Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what's known as the sun's confession. We aren't just going to look at the strict mechanics of the cosmic dance going on above our heads. No, we're actually going to examine what that mind-blowing mathematical precision implies about the grander order of the entire universe. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever stepped outside, just looked up at the daytime sky and tried to really truly comprehend the staggering scale of our solar system? I mean, it is genuinely mind-boggling. We're sitting right now on this rocky little planet, hurtling through the sheer vacuum of space, completely safely wrapped in this invisible gravitational embrace, which kind of leads us to a really fascinating question. Whose work is this balance? Seriously, think about our sun for a second. Just to give you an idea of its raw, untamed power, the sun consumes 600 million tons of hydrogen every single second. Just let that sink in for a moment. Every single second. And yet, despite being this unfathomably heavy, violent nuclear reactor for over 4.5 billion years, it's held 8 incredibly diverse planets, hundreds of orbiting moons, and millions of scattered asteroids in this perfectly choreographed, relentless order. Earth sits exactly where it needs to be to sustain liquid oceans. Giant Jupiter is out there sweeping up dangerous space debris right where it should. It maintains this unbelievably delicate, life-sustaining equilibrium across billions of miles. But how? And honestly, perhaps even more intriguingly, when we look at this flawless perpetual balance, to whom or what do we actually attribute this design?
Well, to understand the who, or the why, behind that flawless balance, we absolutely have to look first at the how. And to do that, we shift our focus from the abstract straight into the cold, hard, and honestly, completely beautiful reality of physics. We're talking about gravity and universal constants. You can kind of think of universal constants as the unchanging cheat codes of the universe. They're these fundamental, completely unalterable numbers that dictate exactly how matter and energy interact. I mean, if these constants were off by even a fraction of a percent, the universe as we know it simply wouldn't exist. Poof, gone. So, that perfect equilibrium we see when we look at cool simulations of the night sky, that's not sustained by some conscious daily effort from the planets trying to stay in line. They aren't consciously behaving. Instead, this entire balance is governed entirely by these underlying physical mechanics that run with the precision of a Swiss watch. It's a system built on absolutely rigid mathematical foundations.
And the sheer, inescapable nature of the law of gravity is exactly what ties all of this together. By definition, gravity dictates that a central body's mass entirely determines the orbital mechanics of all the surrounding objects, and it does so with absolute mathematical certainty. Our sun makes up roughly 99.8% of all the mass in our entire solar system. 99.8, because it is just so unimaginably heavy, it massively warps the very fabric of space-time around it. Picture a heavy bowling ball dropped right into the center of a large trampoline. The sheer weight of that ball pulls the fabric downward, creating a super deep dip, right? Now, if you were to roll a few marbles onto that trampoline, they wouldn't just roll around randomly. They'd circle the bowling ball, getting pulled continuously inward by the curvature of the fabric. That is exactly what's happening out there in our solar system. The planets aren't just deciding to orbit in nice, neat circles. They're literally falling around the sun along these invisible curves of space-time created by its massive weight. There's no guesswork. There's no randomness here. The universal constants of gravity rigidly dictate the speed, the distance, and the trajectory of everything caught in the sun's gravity well. And this brilliantly illustrates a crucial distinction we really need to make about our place in the universe. Historically, a lot of ancient cultures looked up at the blazing sun and they saw a literal deity. They saw an all-powerful entity operating by its own independent choice, basically a conscious ruler of the sky that needed to be worshipped and appeased so it wouldn't just, abandon the earth to freezing darkness. But modern astrophysics tells a completely different, yet honestly equally awe-inspiring story. The sun is operating strictly by mass and mathematical certainty. It cannot choose to suddenly let Earth drift away into the cold. It can't suddenly decide to change its gravitational pull or take a long weekend off from burning hydrogen. It's completely bound, constrained, and ordered by the universal constants of physics. It acts exactly as its mass dictates it must act. So it's a servant to the laws of mass and gravity, not the author of them.
Which brings us to a really fascinating philosophical concept derived directly from observing these strict physical constraints. We call this the sun's confession. If the sun, with all its blinding light and incredible power, is essentially a giant, brilliant prisoner of mathematical laws, what does its constrained behavior actually tell us about the ultimate nature of the universe? Well, it forces us to look beyond the mighty star itself. We really can't view it as an independent actor anymore. Instead, we have to look at the overarching system it is so deeply embedded within. We've got to consider the overarching rules that actually govern the star. A great, century-defining Islamic scholar actually explored this exact tension between the perceived majesty of the sun and its physical subservience. He interpreted the sun's strict adherence to physical laws as a sort of metaphorical declaration. He wrote,
I can only belong to a being who creates all stars and places them with wisdom. Now, this is a beautifully profound way to frame the astrophysics we just talked about. The scholar is essentially suggesting that the sun, through its perfectly constrained and mathematically obedient behavior, is basically confessing that it's not an independent, autonomous power. It can't be its own master. Instead, it's a subordinate piece of a much grander authored design. It's passively acknowledging that the unbreakable rules governing its every nuclear reaction and gravitational pull were written by a higher organizing principle. It's just a beautifully poetic translation of cold, hard physics.
Okay, let's move on and see how this builds when we expand our view out into the wider cosmos. Because the sun isn't just the center of our local planetary neighborhood. It's incredibly important to remember that it's also a tiny, moving part within an incomprehensibly vast structure. Let's zoom out to the Milky Way and the greater system. When you realize that the sun is itself bound by the laws of gravity to a much larger galactic structure, that confession metaphor we just talked about becomes physically tangible. See, the sun doesn't just sit perfectly still in space while we orbit around it. It's actually hurtling through space, literally caught in the inescapable gravitational pull of a supermassive black hole and this massive concentration of stars right at the very center of our galaxy.
230 million years. Just let that staggering number sink in for a second. That is a single galactic year. That's how long it takes for our mighty, massive sun to complete just one single orbit around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. We are currently hurtling through interstellar space at roughly 500,000 miles per hour, dragging Earth and all the other planets along with us, just to make that 230 million year journey. To put that timescale into perspective for you, the last time our sun was in this exact position in the galaxy, dinosaurs were literally just starting to roam the Earth. So on this galactic scale, the sun is incredibly tiny. It is completely subordinate. To the galaxy, our sun is nothing more than a single glowing speck of dust being swept along in an immense cosmic ocean current, utterly powerless to change its sweeping trajectory.
So the crucial point here is this hierarchical chain of command that fundamentally defines our cosmos. These systems are incredibly nested. First, you have the sun commanding the planets via those strict, unyielding laws of gravity. It dictates our year, our seasons, and our orbit. But then, stepping up a level, the Milky Way commands the sun via an even larger, much heavier galactic orbit. And guess what? Even our Milky Way galaxy is being pulled toward other massive cosmic structures. Every single system, no matter how massive, luminous, or awe-inspiring it seems to us, from way down here on Earth, is just a dependent link in a much grander, heavier order. So the sun's metaphorical confession actually aligns perfectly with astrophysical reality. Everything in our observable universe is subservient to something larger and heavier.
Which leaves us exactly here, staring at the ultimate, completely unresolved question. Where is the beginning of this chain? I mean, if the planets answer to the sun, and the sun answers to the immense gravity of the galaxy, tracing these unbreakable laws of physics and gravity all the way back up, where does the hierarchy finally stop? Who or what anchored the very first link in the chain and set the universal constants, those unchanging cheat codes, into motion in the very first place? Think about that profound mystery the next time you feel the warmth of the sun on your face. It's not just a giant ball of gas. It's a brilliant prisoner, a cosmic clue pointing to a much grander design. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, and as always, keep looking up.